Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to start the meeting up. This is the September 11th, 2025 Town of Fishkill Planning Board meeting, and we're calling the meeting to order at 7 p.m. If you'd please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then remain standing for a moment of silence, if you would, in recognition of those who lost their lives as a result of the terrible events of 9/11. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America, everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, everyone. Well, these planning board meetings are definitely important, but when you look at the bigger picture of things, they're still important, but not quite as much as one would think. So thanks for coming, everyone, and let's get the meeting started. All right, so we've got 5 voting members here tonight and both of our alternate members, but we do not have Anthony Brozier and Ravi Ladala, who are regular members, so I'd like to appoint alternate members Kevin O'Connell and Vijay Gopal as voting members for tonight's meeting to fill in for Anthony and Ravi. And also just a reminder that the October meeting has been changed from October 9th to October 2nd, so that's newly revised on our schedule. And also the applicant for the Fishkill Commerce Center has requested further postponement of their application to the October 2nd Planning Board meeting, so that's why they're not on the agenda tonight. So we've got a request for an extension of approval. That's Duchess Storage, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on August 22, 2025. This is a request for an additional 3-month extension of the resolution of conditional final approval adopted by the board on September 14th, 2023. And the board most recently granted a 3-month extension of the resolution of conditional final approval at the June 12th, 2025 meeting, which expires on September 14th. So, welcome, Mr. Ward Willis. Good to see you again, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome. I know you were hoping not to see me again, but we continue to make progress, and I think we're as close as we've been, and we're ready to resolve the open issues. So what's transpired since I was last before you was that the property is being transferred to the lender, as reflected in our letter of August 21st, to Goldsmith Investment Group, LLC. We provided the board with a copy of the deed. And as a result of that, we need to revise the land bank parking agreement to reflect the new owner, as well as the site plan to reflect the new owner, and we're in the process of doing that. There was the open issue with respect to the letter of credit. We have resolved that with the town attorney. We had submitted the draft to him. He had some comments. We've had a conversation with him. And we now have a final revised draft that we will be submitting to Debbie in the next day or two, and that language is being agreed upon, so we believe it will meet with Mr. Gaba's satisfaction. Once that is done, we will then present Debbie with the signed bond, the signed site plan reflecting the new ownership, and we intend to submit the recorded land bank parking agreement reflecting the new ownership, and those are the 3 items that are due. And then your Chairman, you would be ready to hopefully sign that because the consultants have otherwise signed off on the documents.
All right. Any questions from board members?
Wasn't there a question about DOT?
No, there was a question about the property taxes which have been paid.
No, I wasn't. No, I'm talking. No, not the property taxes. Department of Transportation.
No, well, there was always a question about the status of the roundabout and if DOT has advanced those designs. I don't believe they have. We've not received any notification, but our site plan takes that into account. We've not received any notice from DOT.
Okay. Any other questions? Dominic, you're okay with this extension?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to approve a 3-month extension of the resolution of conditional final approval for site development plan and special use permit for the Duchess Storage application to December 14th, 2025, I think would be the new date.
So moved.
That was Fred moved it, and Felix seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0.
Thank you. With all due respect, looking forward not to seeing you again.
Same here.
Thank you.
Okay, now we go to project reviews, and we have Willow Lake Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit back for their second meeting. This is the board to review the application and supporting documentation accepted and referred at the August 14th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. So, would the applicant team like to come up to the podium? You don't have to all hurry up at once.
Try to take turns.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll just ask you all to just give us any details that weren't discussed at the last meeting, because we had a fairly brief discussion at that point. So if you want to get into any more details about the site plan, and then also we haven't had a chance to talk about any of the other studies, like the traffic study, the habitat diversity study. Like we have a phase 1 archaeological study, so whatever you'd like to add at this point would be great.
Sure. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Zach Kam from Dynamic Engineering for the record. Since the last meeting in front of you, your consultants have issued a number of comments and reviewed the plans, the reports, all the documents in detail. So we're happy to kind of answer and go through any of those responses and back and forth tonight if the board has any additional questions. We didn't submit any new information, so everything we submitted before the last time is what was reviewed by your professional consultants. To touch on a couple of the reports that we didn't really go into detail on last time, the Phase 1A was completed. It recommended a Phase 1B. That has since been completed. The report's in draft status, but it will be submitted to SHPO in the coming weeks. There were no significant artifacts discovered, and the report will recommend that no additional investigation takes place for the Phase 1B.
All right. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to mention at this point, or we could go right into into MJ's memo, and which is quite lengthy, and we can just go over things and then direct some questions to you if you like.
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions that the board or the consultants have.
All right. So we have Dennis Lynch and Anisha Samuels here from MJ. So I'll let you two take over and tag team on this one. And again, you do have a pretty long memo, but so don't feel obligated to cut things short. There's a lot in there. And so we'd like to hear details on anything you think are relevant.
Okay, so for the public record, I want to highlight that this is a type 1 action. You have provided the long form, which is perfect, and we will proceed as type 1 review, which will be coordinated review. Some involved agencies or interested agencies would be the zoning board for your variances to be considered, the village of Fishkill regarding your potable water and sanitary sewer, the planning department for your GML, since GML is required, Department of Health for public and water, Department of New York State DEC for speedies and endangered species, and parks for cultural and historic and archaeological resources. Upon review of Part 1 of the FEAF, you will be required to do a SWIP, which you have provided, and MJ has provided some comments with that, which we will get into in just a second. You will need to have a letter provided from the village of Fishkill regarding the willingness to provide and service the project. You will also need a response from parks regarding no effect. I believe you mentioned that that's in the works, but you will need that before the project seeker can be closed when we get to that point. Upon review of part one also, we have identified that you will be removing some barriers, some trees, you'll be removing some trees. You will need to do a visual impact study, which you have provided, but I believe some additional vantage points needs to be explored, as the vantage points you explored seems to be somewhat limited and not the areas of concern that was raised by the neighbors. So some additional vantage points needs to be explored with that. Upon part two review of the FEIF, some areas of potential concern that could potentially have small impact to large impact that will need to be explored includes impacts on land, impacts on surface water, intensity of use. You're seeking a parking variance, so there needs to be some additional commentary regarding that, some justification regarding that. Some additional areas of concern is the aesthetic concern that I mentioned earlier, and potential impacts as it pertains to noise and light. You will need to provide something to justify, whatever events you're having and how you're going to be ensuring compliance with the noise ordinances. Other areas of concern include consistency with the community character. There's something different, new, and very unique. So you will need to provide something that highlights how consistent this is with the neighborhood, or how it can become consistent with the neighborhood. And if not consistent, at least how it will function well within the neighborhood. And lastly, traffic is a small concern. I understand that there will not be public transportation, as you'll be busing people to and from along within the park or within the project, but there still may be some concern as it pertains to traffic. You are going to be seeking a special use permit, even though your uses are permitted, they're not permitted by right, so you will need a special use permit, so we will be evaluating that once we get there. And as I mentioned, you are seeking a few variances, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so going through, it is a pretty lengthy letter, but kind of as you set up the plans, you had an overall sheet and then multiple sheets after that, so I kind of set up the review letter the same way. So I had basically some high-level comments, and then I went into details on the smaller comments. I'm not going to hit those smaller comments on the individual sheets unless the board or the applicant has any questions.
Okay.
Going through with the narrative, we just asked for a little bit expansion on that, of the hours of operations, additional seasonal and annual schedules, any special events. As you'd mentioned, there was a phase 1A done, and it sounds like you have a 1B that was is complete or near complete. Going through for the habitat, there was note that there was the Indiana batten, northern long-eared bat. There was a recommendation of not removing any trees between November 1st and March 31st, and that was on the plan, so that should be taking care of that. Going through, as Anisha had mentioned, you had done some sight lines through the project. One of the things you had provided on the second sheet, it was kind of through from the neighbor, and it kind of went through the site. Just asking if there could be some different vantage points looking towards where the restaurant's going to be, and some other from, especially that one neighbor that has a direct sight line.
Can I interject?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe along the parking, like similar to where you started, point A, but like going north towards where the parking would be. That would be a vantage point of interest, I believe,
Sure.
because that might be an area of concern for the neighbors.
Absolutely.
Getting into the actual plan review, on the survey, we had really no comments, cover sheet, no comments, minor comments on the existing about noting when the wetlands were delineated. We did have a comment on the tree survey you had done. There was one tree that was marked out that was a 51-inch tree that looked like it was in pretty fair condition, that was outside the actual limits of disturbance that was noted to be coming down. So we're just, asked maybe look into possibly preserving that tree. The environmental constraints, there are some, you're outside of the buffer areas for the wetlands, but there's a couple areas where you're going in with the town. So you are going to need to seek a Fishkill water body buffer permit for that. The overall comment, you did have one refuse enclosure that was located in the lower parking lot. We just had a question if that's enough to serve. I know there's going to be, throughout the site, you're going to manage your refuse internally, but I didn't know if there had to be a couple other additional spots that maybe, you'd have to have for refuse, or if that one spot is going to be sufficient for the project.
So what, say again where the one shown on the plan is located?
The one refuse enclosure, it's in that lower,
It's to the east of the eastern parking lot, along the northeast corner, tucked behind the parking lot.
So it's not like right near the hotel or the restaurant per se?
No, so the dining and event hall structure and the restaurant both have compactors beneath them, so they'll have some self-contained refuse that will then get carted to the.
Okay.
And Dennis, just before you continue, the tree you had asked about is this one here. That line isn't actually the driveway, it's the existing retaining wall, so that tree is going to remain.
oh, okay,
Yep.
perfect. Going through, we did have one comment on the parking, about the size of the parking. Typically, it's 9 by 20. I'm sorry, 10 by 20, and they were a little bit smaller. I know they're going to be
Valet
valet
spaces.
parking, so I think just in your, when you have your justification of your variance of the reduction in parking, just add to that.
Would that be a design waiver from the planning board to go beneath the 10 by 20?
Zoning board.
How does that, would that be a zoning?
No, I don't think it's a zoning question. I think it really would be a planning board, either waiver or just adjustment, I guess you might call it. There's nothing specifically that says the planning board, is authorized to waive this, that, or the other thing, but we've had that happen a few times. But I think the key question on that is how the valet parking is going to work with like the stacked parking, which in that sense is kind of quite different from what we've seen in most developments. So maybe some, narrative or something that would further address that might be appropriate.
Okay. So continuing, we have the overall grading plan. We just make note that there's several retaining walls. I think the highest one was about 12 feet. So as per that, you're going to have them designed and stamped by a licensed professional engineer. There's over 30 inches, and you have barriers on top of them. We do note that there's going to be a good amount of fill brought in. We were just looking to see if there's, for a geotech, you provided the geotech report, if there was any recommendations on the fill coming in and any kind of compaction requirements on that. Also ask about estimate of the truckloads that would be coming in for that fill material. Really didn't have any comments on the drainage, overall utility. I didn't know if the utilities that were going to be on site, the water and the sewer, if they're going to be privately owned, or if there's going to be owned by the village and easements.
Yep, so they're all going to be private.
Okay. And then you'd be doing some improvements within the town right away, so you have to get the appropriate permits from the town highway super on that. Some minor comments on the utilities and utility profiles, but nothing major on that. Landscaping, nothing really crazy on landscaping. Overall lighting, we did note, we just want to clarify if there's going to be any lighting on the actual buildings. I don't think the plan had that. We're just concerned about nighttime use, especially the dining hall and the event areas, making sure that those are properly lit for safety. Overall, the sediment and erosion control plan, some minor comments and some notation on there. You are going to be over the 5 acres, so I don't know if you're going to have either a phasing plan or if you're going to ask for a 5-acre waiver, but either way, just some clarification on that.
Just for the record, on that same page 14 in your memo, number 91, you refer to the town of Ramapo, but that's another community that you work in, right?
Well, maybe we do have to go to Ramapo.
Yeah, we will think about referring this to the town of Ramapo Planning Board for comments.
For the circulation, you had done vehicle tracking for an SU-30, which is a smaller truck. We just made note that typically there's, for beverage and food, there sometimes come in larger trucks. So I don't know if it's going to be limited to just that size, or if you plan on having larger trucks, the WDB 40, if you can do a revised plan on that. Also coming out, I think that there was some overlap into the oncoming traffic, so I think it just maybe if you can reconfigure the entrance a little bit, make those radius slightly larger to see if you can accommodate those vehicles. The fire truck, we really don't have any comments. We just recommend that you get in touch with the fire official. The traffic, we did have some comments on that regarding the site distance. Going through and making some recommendations on the site distance. There was a few discrepancies in between the narrative and the figures and some of the synchro data that was on there. And again, we had some comments about kind of overall how the parking is going to work with the valet. If there's, I think a lot of this can be handled with the narrative of how the operation is going to happen. If you do have the kind of tandem parking, how that works out, if someone needs to get out or not. And we also had a comment in here about when you have larger events, how is that going to work out? When you have something that comes out that we have, 300 plus guests, how is that going to work? But I guess, that's kind of all internal managing of the site. So I think if you guys can just provide a little bit more detail on how that goes, that would be helpful. So that was kind of the high level our review. I don't know if there's any specific comments either the board or the applicant wants to go over. We can surely go over those.
Dennis, let me just ask one. I don't know if you mentioned this in more detail. I might have missed it, but on page 10, number 41, talking about providing a cut and fill analysis for the project.
Yeah, so we just asked for a cut and fill analysis. It looks like there's going to be import material to the site, so we just did ask for estimate of the volume, and then the truckloads coming in, and ultimately where they're coming. Or I don't know if they know where you're coming from yet, or if there's a hauling plan that could be put together of what the trucks would be coming in.
Do you have any idea at this point of what the generic cut and fill situation might be like?
We do. So our next submission will include a formal cut fill analysis. There is a significant amount. I don't have the raw number off the top of my head, but something to remember too about the site itself. We have very shallow rock throughout most of the site. So to avoid a lot of rock excavation, avoid blasting, what we did is essentially built the site up in order to be able to run our utilities underneath the fill soil and really get that separation from rock. So just something to keep in your mind when we do ultimately talk about that fill number.
Okay. And then also on page 6, number 8, talking about expanding the narrative. So it would be helpful if you cover some of these other things a little bit more specifically on hours of operation and seasonal and annual schedule of events, and specific types of events that might be conducted on the property other than weddings, which we already know about. So just, the more you can provide in terms of details, the better, I think. Any other questions from planning board members?
Jonathan, I have a question. If they do have a function there, and you have a lot of cars showing up at once, where are you doing the stacking before you get them to the valet?
That's a great question. With us tonight also is Corey Chase from our traffic team, if there are specific traffic questions. But I will show you kind of the entry configuration and where cars would be. So the entrance here off Van Wyck Lake, so cars would come up this driveway. They would then come around this bend, and the valet drop-off would be right in this area. Mm-hmm. This is the Welcome Center. We purposely made this road width. It's 32 and a half feet instead of 24 feet. So you have an extra 8.5 feet of width for pull-off areas. And we kept that width on this side as well, just for some added queuing. So you'd have all of these areas in addition to 4 or 5 parking stalls here, this whole area, and then the entire driveway on the way down.
Other questions?
Yeah, just a couple. So that's your parking there and on the right also?
That's correct.
Correct, okay.
The eastern parking lot here on the right would really be more or less for overflow.
Okay.
The majority of vehicles would be utilizing these front lots.
And how many can you park in that? The left side?
In these two lots here,
Yes.
technology, right? Yeah. I'm trying my best over here.
Better than me.
We're getting there. Here we go. Those two lots, give or take, so this row here has 14, another 30, another 34, and then there's 14 here and another 32 here. So give or take, there's probably in the low hundreds in this area right here.
Can you show me when the valet picks up the car, where do they go?
Good question. So it really depends, on where the cars currently are. But in general, they'd be picked up right in this area.
Yeah.
They would either then be driven, they could be parked here, they could also be driven and parked over in these areas, or of course use the lower lot to the left.
Is that a two-way
Yeah.
road?
So this is one-way circulation throughout, and then this road here is two-way.
So they have to go outside and come back
That's what I'm
in?
about to say. Do they have to go back out onto Van Wyck?
To use the eastern parking lots, yes.
That's a shame.
If we did, hi, good evening, everyone. Alex Friedman, one of the managing partners at Willow Lake. If we did have a substantial event and there was a fill-up of the front two lots, the traffic would simply be closed off to the entry of
And then
that
go
main
the other
drive,
way.
and they would simply come into the other
Okay.
location. And so from there, we also have a very long queuing capability, and they'd be able to enter the lot from that side. So we don't anticipate having the cars enter the site, then leave, then come back in.
Okay. I know we've had some comments from neighbors about potentially, lights from cars. How are we dealing with that?
That's a great question. So the retaining wall you see on this parking lot has a 4-foot parapet. So the wall actually extends 4 feet above the parking level, and it'll be a solid wall.
Okay.
So headlights would hit that wall and be
Okay.
be
And
solid.
that's on both?
Correct.
Okay, very nice. Okay. And then I think I had one more, that was a question that came from Dutchess County Planning, was about the zoning. So it talks about that only R4A would allow commercial recreational use. So, do you have any comment on that?
It's a special use permit from your planning board, and we would defer to the town zoning official.
Yeah, that's something that you might want to double-check with the building department on that and just make sure. We talked about that briefly in the pre-application meeting, but we want to make sure that if any further interpretation or determination might be necessary from the building department, that become part of the record as early in the process as possible.
Does Dominic have anything to say about that? Dominic, do you have anything about that?
Not at this time.
No? Okay. If you could look into that, folks, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Other questions from planning board members?
Just quickly on that parking, so,
Do me a favor, just use the microphone.
sorry,
Okay, thank you then.
about the parking. So, that's the overflow, but So if there is an event and you also have guests there, you're figuring that that will be enough to accommodate large event and people residing in all those little bungalows?
Yes, exactly. The model that was designed is very conservative in nature. So almost any event that this site would have has already kind of been conjured up with those circulation numbers.
I just was wondering that might end up being like overflowing onto the road.
The peak generation from the largest event we could have is approximately 167 vehicles, and there's 225 spaces.
People who are playing tennis, do they have the valet parking too, or do they have parking for themselves?
There's valet parking for everyone.
Huh?
Everyone has valet parking.
So speaking of the GML referral letter that we got back from the county dated September 8th, the county does mention other things, mostly things like circulation, parking, lighting, landscaping, and signage. So I'm not going to go over all their comments, but you've seen the GML letter?
We have.
Yeah, so if in your next response letter, please try to adjust those to the extent that you can.
We'll respond to each and every one of them.
Okay.
Jonathan, I got one more.
Yep, go ahead.
EV, electric vehicles, are you going to have stations for them in your parking or not?
We currently are potentially exploring that, but there's nothing in the immediate plan for that at the moment.
All right, because if you have people coming in for some distance, you know, and they're staying at your facility and they're EV, just curious.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, something to check into. And some of the recent proposals we've had, there haven't been current proposals for EV charging stations, but the applicants have agreed to provide the electrical connections, you know, the underground electrical necessary to put that in the future if it becomes needed. It's always easier to do it during construction initially rather than do it later. So that's something else you might think about.
Yeah, it's a great point. We'll definitely consider it.
Let's see. What else? Kevin or Jody, do you have anything? Any questions at this point? I wanted to go back to tree preservation for a second, and just generally, the town code does contain a provision. Actually, the whole Chapter 140 deals with tree preservation, but specifically, a tree preservation plan is something that Section 140-6 talks about in terms of being able to preserve as many significant mature trees as possible. So take a look at that provision. I don't know that we're quite at a point yet where the planning board would require specifically a tree preservation plan, but we certainly are authorized to do that in the town code. And it just seems that although a lot of the development area that you'll be dealing with has already been cleared, there probably are some pretty nice mature trees in there, and any that can be saved with, you know, careful development going around them would be, you know, probably beneficial not only to the neighborhood but to the development itself. So I know you have a pretty significant landscaping plan as well, but there's nothing like, you know, large natural vegetation if it can stay and not be in the way of the development.
Understood. We did actually provide a tree plan with a removal plan. The majority of the trees being removed are in the general area of this access road, as well as this eastern parking lot. Something to consider as well, the disturbance we're providing, which is only about 25 acres on a 105-acre parcel, was very thoughtful to keep as much of the development within the existing limits of disturbance as possible. So the trees we're proposing to remove that are over 18 inches are 152, we're proposing 586 in their place. So we feel as though we've very thoughtfully laid out the site to limit as much of those mature removals as possible. But we're always happy if there's a specific tree or species to take a look at that and try to save it if possible.
All right.
I got one off the wall for you. Willow Lake, fishing release or no fishing?
We've been maintaining a policy of no fishing, so unless that changes in the future by
Okay,
discussion.
well, I was just curious. It's off the wall, so.
Yeah, so far it's been no fishing.
Any other questions at this point? Let's see. Oh, I did want to talk about, revisit the site visit question. Talked about that briefly at the last meeting. Any further thoughts from board members on visiting the site? I have already myself been there. I think if anybody is interested in going, we should probably do it in small groups, so we don't have to worry about a quorum issue. So if anybody is interested, I would suggest contacting Debbie so that Debbie can coordinate with the applicant team in terms of making sure you get not only access to the site, but maybe, arrange for a quick tour of the property as well.
I would like to do that.
So probably doing that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I would too, Debbie.
Send me an email so I can set it up.
Yeah.
With the applicant. I appreciate it.
I drove in, but, I'd like to go in the back where the cabins are gonna be constructed, because it's rocky, and I was concerned about bringing in fill so you could bury the utilities in the fill above the rock, then runoff into the lake. How do you mitigate that?
Yep. So there's both temporary measures during construction. There will be silt fence. We'll probably include some type of filter sock. And for the lake itself, we could even install what's called a turbidity curtain. It's essentially a very fine net that you could put on the inside of the lake that would keep any sediment constrained to the bankside, so it's easily removed if anything were to get in there.
Are they going to be stick-built or are you doing modules?
Sorry?
Cabins going to be stick-built or they're modulars?
We're exploring both options at the moment. Modular might make a lot of sense for us, but we're exploring both at the moment.
Okay.
All right. Anything anyone wants to add at this point? Otherwise, we can get into classifying this as a type 1 action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the MJ memo indicates that this most likely would be a type 1 action. It seems that's true. This involves the physical alteration of more than 10 acres, and the proposed site disturbance is about 25 acres or so. And then also, I think not mentioned in the MJ memo, but in municipalities of under 150,000 population, a facility with 100,000 square feet gross floor area or more qualifies as a type 1 action, and this is about 116,000 according to the environmental assessment form. So Dominic, with that, I assume you would agree that this should be a type 1 action?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think at this point there are quite a few things that we've talked about tonight and in the MJ memo as well, that and many of them do relate to environmental questions that would pertain to the environmental assessment form, that we probably are ready now to classify this as a type 1 action, but not necessarily ready to authorize circulation of a notice of intent until we get some of these other things worked out a little bit more. So with that, would somebody like to make a motion to classify the proposed Willow Lake development as a type 1 action?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconded it. Any further discussion? We'll get you next time, Jody. Any further discussion? No. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So The action is now classified as type 1. And so do you all on the applicant team have any other questions on anything we've gone over today? I know we have a submission deadline
September 24th.
September 24th, right, for the October 2nd meeting.
We'll be busy next week.
Okay.
The
Okay.
only request we would have to help streamline some of that, if we could have permission to deal with the consultants offline to help hammer through some of those comments.
Does that sound acceptable to the board? Yeah, that's a common thing that we do. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. If there's nothing else for tonight, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Thanks for coming.
Good evening.
See, just give me a second here.
That's it, right? See you tomorrow.
She's done. Some people are lucky.
And she has a long drive back, actually. All right. So the next item on the agenda, and let's see, this will be the Fishkill Self-Storage Special Use Permit and Site Development Plan. Board to discuss the revised final environmental impact statement, a draft finding statement, and a draft resolution. And Liz Axelson from CPL is coming up to our table here, I see. So, hey Liz, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I think the board is going to focus primarily on the draft finding statement prepared by CPL in collaboration with our attorney, Dominic Cordisco. A draft resolution has been authorized by the board, but is not completed yet. So, Dominic, do you want to just start off by giving us a little overview of kind of where we are in the secret process? And
yes, yes, I'd be happy to. So, this application is on for the review of this draft finding statement, and although the board had authorized a resolution, and that resolution is in process, I have not completed it at this time, but there's a good reason for it other than just law office failure, which is what a lot of attorneys like to say as a term, they call law, rather than saying personal failure, it's law office failure. But in this particular case, there's a timing issue that came up as a result of the filing of the final environmental impact statement. And there's a very particular requirement within seeker that has a very narrow time frame, that has a time where the board can't take any action, and then also time within which the board must take action. And so when you have an FEIS, which is the penultimate step in the seeker process, the seeker regulations say that once you finalize the FEIS, which you have, then the board has to circulate that FEIS, and then there's what they call a 10-day consideration period where no action can take place. And this particular FEIS was circulated in a number of different ways. One, it was sent out to all of the interested and involved agencies that you would have as part of your notice, but it's also required to be posted online with the DEC database, which is called the Environmental Notice Bulletin. And that provides notice to the general public, the public at large, that the FEIS has been adopted by the board. And that didn't occur until September 4th. And the reason for that is that even in our modern digital age, where information is basically transmitted almost instantaneously, regardless of what's happening around the world, the DEC only publishes the ENB once a week on Wednesdays. And, it gets better, that they only publish that ENB once a week. Like, you have to submit your notice that goes into their bulletin a week in advance. So everything was timely. There was no missteps here. It's just a question of the calendar. So the FEIS, as I said, was circulated to the interested and involved agencies, but the notice in the Environmental Notice Bulletin didn't occur until September 4th. And so since it's on September 11th right now, we are technically within that 10-day consideration period. But I could go on, because seeker says that you must adopt a finding statement, which is what Liz has drafted for your review, no later than 30 days. So in this case, if September 4th is the notice to the public, then you must adopt a seeker finding statement within 30 days. And there is the reason why the board and the chairman moved the meeting from October 9th to October 2nd, because it will be within that narrow window. And it's a very narrow window, so that's why. And so even though I'm working on the resolution, and it's unlike any other resolution that you've had to deal with, because this particular resolution has to address the determination of substantial similarity that's in your code, as well as addressing the fact that the applicant has applied for a special permit and site development plan review. So with that said, I think the board is in good position. You'll meet the legal requirements by adopting these documents as revised and as reviewed, and with your input, of course. And you are set up to do so for your October 2nd meeting. But tonight is really discussion only. And Liz has finalized her initial draft of the finding statement. So I'll turn it over to her. And obviously if the board has any comments, you have not only this meeting, but you also will have that opportunity between now and October 2nd, and on October 2nd itself, to finalize any additional concerns or things that you want expressed, because after all, at the end of the day, these are your documents.
So if anyone has any questions for Dominic on what he's gone over, this would be a good time, but otherwise we can ask Liz to start.
Questions are extra. I charge extra for questions. Oh,
How
I'm
much?
Funny
As long
guy.
as long as it's not the usual attorney rate, we consider that.
I'm only teasing. You have to have a little bit of levity. I'm sorry.
I know. Well, do you want to start off, Liz, and just kind of...
Sure. And if, I don't know if you want to knock on the table if I'm babbling too much. I tried to pick out some key points, and some of it is the structure of the document, because I know the board's reviewing it. I don't know how many of you have reviewed finding statements before. And lucky for me, I crafted a draft, and I had some very able-bodied people helping me to edit it. So it has been through some review, which is good. So this is draft number 2. I'm just going to step through. It's got a title. Right on the first page, it tells you the name of the action, Fishkill Self-Storage, the location, tax map number, etc., the lead agency. And then there's a description of action, which you probably have all seen many times before in the DEIS and in other decision-making documents. And as part of the description of the action, I also touch on that little hunk of zoning that you have, 150-19, uses permitted and prohibited, Section B, which is really at the core of this decision-making process, both code and zoning-wise and seeker and impact-wise. They kind of really dovetail. And then I go into the section on page number 3, facts and conclusions relied on to support this decision. I just briefly described that. And then the description of action section starts on page 4, and I'm not going to read it, but the reason that it does go on all the way through the top of page 7 is because there are, other than zoning section 150-19B, there are all these other hunks of zoning that also feed into your decision-making process. And then I talk a little bit about the existing uses near the site, just so you know what are the real existing conditions here. I didn't want that to all be lost, and it's good to have a refresher as you're considering this. So at the bottom of page 7 is the beginning of a summary of impacts and specific findings. And there are really just 3 topics. One is very long. The first topic is planning, land use, and zoning. And then over on page 16 is community character and aesthetic resources. And the bottom of page 18 is open space and recreation and aesthetic resources. So those are the main areas of impact. And I don't want to babble, but I do want to touch on the 4 points briefly. So I'm going back to page 7 at the bottom, planning, land use, and zoning. And the paragraph there is introducing you to the fact that there are these 4 points in zoning, section 150-19, uses permitted and prohibited. And there are 4 criterion, so that's what I call them as I go. And at the bottom of the page, it says the first criterion is 150-19B1A, which states the proposed uses shall meet the intent of and be consistent with the goals and objectives and policies of the comprehensive plan. And there's a lot in there for the next page and a half, but I try to touch a little bit on the 2009 comprehensive plan because it kind of set the stage for what happened in the comprehensive plan in 2023. And in the 2009 plan, there's the statement, the street is our most important public space. And then in the next paragraph, the first goal in the comprehensive plan update, connect people and places, expresses the importance of road networks, sidewalks, pedestrian paths, and bicycle trails. There's a lot in the CPU about pedestrian and biking amenities. And the CPU objectives express the following. That the need for extended and connected sidewalks and pedestrian crossings are intended to, quote, provide continuous safe pedestrian access from and to residential and non-residential, in parentheses, business, service, community, etc., uses in these settled areas. Anyway, there's more supportive information about that. I'm going to go on to criterion number 2, which is over in the middle of page 9. And that criterion states that the proposed use shall meet the stated purpose and legislative intent of the district in which the use is proposed to be located per the legislative intent of the given district regulations or those given in zoning section 150-13. And that section goes on for quite a while because I think that's a very important one because it speaks to the logic of the zoning in terms of the purpose of the zoning district, but also the progression of the zoning districts, which I know that you've read about before. but that's covered on page 10. And that section concludes basically that the proposed action is not consistent with the zoning section stated purpose, and that it isn't in conformity with the regulations, requirements, and restrictions. So in that regard, the conclusion is that the proposed action is not consistent with zoning section 150-19B1B regarding the stated purpose of zoning. Then the next section, or the next criterion, is number 3, which has to do with the proposed use shall not adversely affect public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents. And again, there's a lot of supporting text in there. I'm not going to go over it in any depth, but it does focus on traffic safety and hazard problems along that section of Route 9D that's right in front of the site. And then it also talks in the middle of page 12 about there is text in the DEIS and in the FEIS in response about delivery trucks typically being in these neighborhood areas, but the whole point that's brought up in page 12 has to do with the fact that the folks that would be customers potentially of a self-storage place may be renting trucks, may be renting large trucks to get everything done all at once, and may not be trained truck drivers. And so it talks about the hazard of that, but it also characterizes the neighborhood with families, small children, seniors walking. Anyway, so it points out that these are the normal usages of the neighborhood area. And so the conclusion near the bottom of page 13 is the proposed action is not consistent with zoning section 150-19B1C as the location of proposed self-storage facility will, quote, adversely impact the public health, safety, and general welfare of the residents. And then the last criterion, which is way at the bottom of page 13, and it's a long one, but I think you'll get the gist of it. The proposed use shall share characteristics in common with, and not be of greater intensity, density, or generate more environmental impact, including but not limited to having no greater adverse effects upon traffic, noise, air quality, parking, or any other reasonably relevant attribute than those listed in the zoning district in which it is to be located. So it's a whole package, that criterion. And I just want to highlight, again, this is related to rental trucks being driven by untrained drivers, and then also focusing again on the streets and roads being used by the neighborhood folks, whether it's people with young children or seniors, people biking, kids just playing in the street, that sometimes happens. So the conclusion is that the proposed action is inconsistent with the town's zoning with nearby neighborhood land use patterns and the town's adopted land use plans. And over on page 16, it concludes that the proposed action is not consistent with that zoning section, 150-19B1D. And it concludes that the planning board finds that the proposed action would have a significant adverse impact on planning, land use, and the environment, including traffic safety, community character, open space, and recreation. It would be a use that is of greater intensity and inconsistent with the types of non-residential and residential uses permitted in the RB zone. So those are the 4 criterion kind of set forth in an environmental findings format. And then bottom of page 16 deals again with community character. And I'm just quoting something from the County of Dutchess Department of Planning and Development. Quote, self-storage is a particularly inactive use typically associated with large sites, gates, and little activity. This use can deaden an area or corridor. What makes the subject property unique is that it stands at an important gateway for the community rather than enhance the gateway as the CPU would like or envisions. Construction of the self-storage facility will deaden this gateway, thus the applicant has failed to meet their burden under 150-19B1A. And so there's some public commentary in there and Dutchess County commentary in there. And then on page 17, I briefly touch on aesthetic aspects of community character. And it just has to do with how the residents and visitors engage with the area, walking, biking, driving in a car. It touches briefly on the AADT, the average annual daily traffic value of 20,371 cars riding along that stretch of road, which translates into 7,435,415 trips per year. And that's just accounting for one viewer there. So it's a big impact because it's a lot of people are going by there and judging whether they think it's a nice area or not. Let's see. There were a lot of public comments in the DEIS, and one that kind of, I think, says a lot. Quote, self-storage facilities are just generally a blight on communities. The listed uses for the RB district are so far from what is being proposed by the self-storage company. Why on earth would you allow them to bend the rules and create such a monstrosity? People had very strong feelings about this.
Liz, I'm sorry, what page were you on with that?
I was just reading from page 17.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to lose you there. There's a paragraph right near the top. There's an aesthetic aspect. I read from there. And then also at the bottom, that first bullet, self-storage facilities are just generally, so
Yep.
you can see where I am.
Thank you.
So then going from the bottom of 17 to the top of 18, members of the public commented in a number of ways, and then CPL also made a comment that asserts that, quote, the operation of a self-storage facility results in minimal social interaction and does not enhance community activity in general. That's at the top of page 18. And then there's a middle paragraph there that refers to the seeker handbook that talks about community character, that it is a real thing, and it really can be impacted. It's not as easy to describe and define, but I think most people that live in a community have a sense of the character. And basically, the conclusion is that because of the minimal social interaction and the fact that self-storage doesn't enhance community activity, that's why they're normally located in a more intensive commercial and industrial type of zone. And basically, the conclusion on the bottom of 18 is accordingly, the planning board finds the proposed self-storage facility would have a significant adverse impact on community character and related aesthetic resources. And then the last section, open space and recreation resources, starts at the bottom of page 18 and goes to the top of page 19. And I'm just going to touch on a couple issues because I don't want to carry on for too long. In the second paragraph on the top of page 19, it touches on the Route 9D Northern Gateway Corridor and the enjoyment of this area by residents of Fishkill, and also Beacon and Newburgh. So I went there for one day just for half an hour because that's all the time I had. And I counted people walking, didn't see any bikers, actually talked to a few people. And so I got a sense that in that half an hour running into 8 walkers that, well, if I saw that many in that amount of time, you know, maybe it is really true that it's an area that's really enjoyed. So I look at it as whatever happens on this site could affect 3 communities in a way. People from Beacon coming across and entering into the town and the city, and folks that live nearby in the neighborhoods, as well as the larger Fishkill area. I think that's it. At the bottom of that page, I touch on the fact that the site's frontage is a public space, and it wasn't in my professional opinion, sufficiently addressed. And the conclusion on the top of page 20 is that the visibility of the use based on being hidden behind an imposing and unwelcoming wall of evergreens does not pertain to the RB zoning district's purpose of including, quote, residential uses in a non-residential zone with limited business, institutional, and recreational uses, which are appropriate adjacent to residential uses. So those are my points. I don't know, Jonathan, if there was anything else you wanted me to touch on?
Well, first, are there any questions on what we've gone through so far from planning board members?
I don't have any questions, but I have some comments in a little bit.
Okay, you can do it now, or else hold off if you want.
I wanted, could you, in the end of your finding statements, you talked about the alternatives. Could you go over that too?
Oh,
sure.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so that potential impacts of alternatives begins at the bottom of page 21, and the first alternative is no action, assuming the site would remain in its existing vacant condition with no new structures. And basically, the alternative would not be economically viable to the applicant, and it wouldn't be consistent with the applicant's goals and objectives. And in the site's currently underdeveloped site, the project would not result in any financial benefit to the applicant, and, you know, it also doesn't necessarily result in any benefit to the community. It's just a vacant site, so. Alternative 2, single-family home alternative. That assumes one single-family dwelling, and it basically refers back to the fact that the site used to be one single-family dwelling in the middle, and some accessory structures, kind of a nice, large old home, and I think sheds or something, in a flat open meadow, and it could be done with just a building permit if you were just going to put one home there. It'd be consistent with the character of the surrounding area, and consistent with the historic pattern of development in the area, and consistent with the RB zoning district and the town's comprehensive plan. Alternative 3 is alternative site layout. It assumes the development of a project with a 2-story self-storage building with an identical front, which is the west, and rear, which would be the east setback. Let's see. It would have the same access, landscaping. The only difference would be a building height reduced from the proposed 30-foot to a 25-foot height. It would have an increased southern side yard setback of 171 feet. So that would be further away from the homes to the south. And the amount of parking and loading would be reduced, and no parking or loading would be proposed south of the building. So that alternative was considered, you know, apparently in relation to the nearby neighborhood. It would be identical to the proposed project, except for the reduction in height and parking and loading, and the building being further north. And basically, the impacts related to land use zoning, community plans, and transportation traffic would be substantially the same as those for the proposed project. Alternative 4 is a smaller facility, and the facility, let's see, it'd be 2-story with a reduced gross floor area, reduced number of parking spaces. The building footprint would be reduced from 25,750 square feet to 20,000. And the reduction in parking, it wouldn't really relate to any difference in traffic-related impacts to what's predicted for the project, just fewer parking spaces. Potential visibility of the building from the site frontage, Trail of Two Cities, and the Newburgh Beacon Bridge walkway entrance and where Route 9D meets Van Ness Road would not substantially be reduced compared to the proposed project or to proposed alternative 3. And the last alternative is a 2-story, 40-room hotel without a standalone restaurant. It would be a community recreational and tourist-oriented use consistent with the special use permit and uses listed in the table for the RB zoning district. Conceptual plan would be 2 stories with 15,000 square feet, total gross floor area 30,000 square feet, and it would be 40 guest rooms, an event space for catered banquets, height of 30 feet, 95 parking spaces. It would have a slightly larger southern side yard setback of 133 feet, so again, a little bit away from the folks immediately to the south. And the front yard setback from Route 9D would be an increase from the 200-foot setback for the proposed project. It's permitted in the RB zoning district. It is one of the uses. Wouldn't be subject to substantial similarity because it is permitted. And in contrast to the proposed self-storage use, the hotel alternative would actually be a limited business, potentially consistent with the purposes of the RB zoning district. And let's see. That's it on the alternatives.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Sure.
You know, so alternatives is an interesting part of seeker. You know, it's a requirement under seeker that alternatives be evaluated, but there's a distinction between alternatives that are necessarily being undertaken by a government versus alternatives that are applicable to an applicant. And you know, for instance, if the town was just decide to build and I know this would not necessarily be the case, but you know, like build like a new water treatment plant, and it would have the ability to look at potentially several different sites to locate that, or several different alternatives to look at that, you know, where it might be most appropriate, because the town, like all, you know, municipalities in New York State, have the power of eminent domain. They have the ability to go out and say, we need this piece of property, and they have to pay for it and all of that. And I'm getting far afield. But the point is that, you know, there's been established case law under seeker that you can't require an applicant to do necessarily an alternative that they don't want to do. So in this case, the alternative analysis was informative because it provides at least a benchmark as to what like you're comparing them to. So it's not, it wasn't inappropriate. It just can't be required. So, you know, the board couldn't say, well, you know, we don't like door number 1, but we prefer door number 3, or, you know, that kind of thing. It's just not something that the board can do. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that.
And also those 5 alternatives that Liz went through were incorporated as alternatives during the scoping process for the draft environmental impact statement. So they didn't just appear from nowhere. They came
Absolutely.
During a whole
Correct.
Process that was subject to public comment and board discussion. So
Yeah.
and
And it certainly helps build the record, and
Yeah.
included, you know, things that could happen out there without this substantially similar determination, and will provide information, you know, for any potential future development on this site.
Let's see, before we have any other questions or discussion from the board, I just wanted to go through, there were actually just a few editorial suggestions I had. I'm going to go backwards since I hadn't actually flagged this one, but I noticed it on that page 23 that we just ended off with, alternative 5. The third line where it says this alternative would be a community recreational and tourist oriented use which is consistent with the special use permit. et cetera. And I would just suggest we add the word potentially consistent with the special use permit. Because special use permits are subject to further review in determining whether they, actually are appropriate or not based on specified criteria in the code. So if we could just add the word potentially before the word consistent. And there's another one similar to that. Let's see. Yeah, so going back to page 14, in the long middle paragraph, there's a similar sentence. It's in the middle. It says the continuing demand for homes regionally points to the single-family detached dwelling scenario, 12 lots or potentially less, which is consistent with zoning, nearby land uses, community character, et cetera. You see that sentence?
Do you want to make the
So I wanted to say,
12 lots or potentially
which
less?
is potentially consistent with zoning,
Oh, I
et
see,
cetera.
okay.
So just inserting that word potentially again.
Yep, very good.
And then, sorry, it's just easier for me to flip backwards
Fine.
on the ones I marked. Page 10. There are two edits all in the first paragraph. This one is in about the middle of the paragraph where it starts, please refer to the comparative analysis table enclosed with this FEIS. And I'd change the word this to the, because this document isn't
That
the
is
FEIS
correct.
anymore.
Yep.
And it just shows that a lot of what Liz included in the finding statement actually came from the FEIS, which makes a lot of sense because, and there's a lot more in the FEIS. That document was about 100 and something pages, I think, and so that's
118.
You've memorized that probably. And then further down in that paragraph, we have another potentially word to add. Although the proposed development scenarios presented in the comparative analysis table may require scaling back, these uses would generally be consistent with the purpose of the RB zoning district. And I would insert the word potentially in front of consistent with the purpose of the RB zoning district.
Got it.
So those were my editorial suggestions. And also that reminds me that there is a good bit of discussion about comparing uses. It's not just the alternatives, but in a lot of the other sections dealing with land use and community character and compatibility. Just pointing out that it's not that the planning board is asking or requiring the applicant to consider other uses than what they're proposing. It's the way the criteria in section 150-19B are set out, which specifically tells us to compare uses, the proposed use, with other uses that are allowed in the RB district. And that's exactly why we did that.
Correct.
So that's all I had for now. Anyone else?
Sure, if I could jump in. Just a few things that I wanted to kind of focus on. First, Liz did a great job, and I know you had some help getting it all together. It really is a much easier read to be able to find what we're looking for. But for myself, a few of the things that I thought were important were number 3, page 11, when we talk about the proposed use shall not adversely impact the public health, et cetera. I think the applicant tried, but unfortunately failed in being able to demonstrate to us how they would be able to safely maneuver their vehicles around. And not only would it impact, I worry about the people on Van Ness, because that would be the first U-turn somebody would try to make. But even our neighbors down in Beacon, would be impacted by it, and even their plan, which would be to go down to Verplank and come all the way around, which would add an extra mile to somebody's, and most people are not that patient. So I don't think they were able to satisfy that requirement for me. And then I think on, 13, we talk about proposed use shall share characteristics in common, etc. The self-storage doesn't share any characteristics in common with the uses in that RB district. And I think the use is very important, and you were able to do a great job, and I like the table you put together, 2.3, that table you gave us. That was very helpful to be able to look and see all the different uses that
Yeah,
are
and
there.
I can't take credit for it because the applicants folks put that table
Okay,
together. I just
well-
put it in there because it was very helpful.
Well,
like
the
you say.
applicant's team did a great job
Yeah.
with that, but it helped us to kind of see that and see what the uses are. And I think that's important to be able, because when we talk about the use, I think the important part is what is the actual use and what is the intent of this district? And I don't see self-storage being part of that intent. The aesthetics, I think, is important. I know 9D they have commercial on the other side, but the way I look at it, living here, 84 cuts it. So on the north side of 84, you have commercial, but once you go past 84 and you're going down, it's all homes. It's all looking in that direction. And I think this would, the aesthetic situation there, I think would be a negative one also. So I like that. I will say one thing that I was hoping that when our zoning administrator gave us his input, it was something I was looking forward to because, supposed to be the expert in helping. I was hoping for more analysis from him, and unfortunately we got a few lines that basically said stuff that I think already knew and didn't give us any more insight. And I think we got more insight with everything that you provided. And I don't feel that the zoning administrator helped the cause at all. So I was hoping for more from him. But those are things I see. And, now I'll look for other things as we go along. But that's it, John.
And I'll just add to that the Section 150-19B indicates that the zoning administrator, building inspector will be asked for an advisory input, is the way they phrase it.
Correct.
As opposed to the usual, what we usually find as a determination or an interpretation by the zoning administrator. So I agree with you, Felix, that what we got from the building inspector, zoning administrator, had some conclusions without any real backing up of the type of facts and thought out rationale that we have now in this finding statement that goes back to the final EIS. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to add anything at this point? Dennis, any thoughts?
Nope.
All right, well, if there are no other things to add, I will just, as a courtesy to the applicant, ask if you have any comments or questions you'd like to throw at us at this point.
Thank you, but no.
Okay. All right. So just looking ahead to the October 2nd meeting, so that we have a few editorial revisions that we'll ask Liz to incorporate into a new draft finding statement and recirculate that prior to the October 2nd meeting. And then we'll look forward to Dominic completing and circulating a draft resolution in advance of the October 2nd meeting.
Certainly.
And so that's already been authorized by the board, so we don't have to take any further action on that tonight.
No, sir.
And if anybody has any other comments from the board, or should they email, or what would you like to do?
Well, I'd rather not, if we're not doing it tonight,
Okay.
it is what it is with
Okay.
the revisions we talked about tonight. I don't want to have a situation where we're, without having the board discussing it, sending additional comments to Liz. We'll have another opportunity, if anyone thinks of anything, at the October 2nd meeting,
Okay.
where we can authorize a further change and then adopt the finding statement on that basis. But unless anyone has anything
No.
further tonight,
No.
I think that probably is it for tonight then on this action, on this item. Okay? All right, then in a second, we will move on to the next item. Okay, I'll talk very slowly. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Century Aggregate Site Development Plan. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on August 21, 2025, a revised draft full environmental assessment form, Part 2, a draft full EAF, Part 3, a revised draft negative declaration, and a revised draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval, and for the board to consider adopting and authorize the planning board chair to endorse these documents. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So, I know you did have a submission where you've, it looks to me like you've addressed things that the board talked about and discussed with you at the last meeting. But if you'd like to give us a brief update, certainly do so.
Good evening. At the last meeting, I think the board had asked, and I'm going to try this, we made revisions to the, I don't know if I got.
That's the letter.
Oh, sorry.
What do you want?
I was looking for the architecturals.
Want the site plan?
Yeah, I think we have. We revised the propane storage area. We provided the details for that, which I think were brought up at the last meeting. And we made changes to legends and call-outs that were brought up at the last meeting. And really, that was the limit. We have conceptual board health approval. Unfortunately, we can't get final until we get this resolution and we submit to the Board of Health. So that should close out, I believe, all the engineering issues. That's pretty much the changes that were made.
All right. Well, shall we go through? There's quite a bit of materials from CPL, thanks to Liz. But why don't you do this all together, because they're all basically related to each other. So
They
there's,
are.
there's your memo, and then the draft EAF parts 2 and 3, and then the neg deck, and then we can, discuss or ask any questions on that when you get through those.
Okay, and basically the memo is just saying that the plan set is sufficiently detailed and the planning board can consider taking seeker action. So what's attached is a full EAF Part 2 and 3 and a revised draft visual EAF addendum and the draft seeker negative declaration notice of determination of non-significance revised. And I don't know if you want me to walk through impact areas or, because I don't.
Well, so let me just ask, so in the full EAF Part 2, I didn't really notice anything
They really were
specifically
very
that was changed from the earlier version. And if that's the case, I don't think we need to walk through it again in detail.
No, there's no need for that. I think there was one minor change, but
Do you know?
I don't think
that-
it's worth walking through.
Do you know where that one minor change was?
Let me
Just
see if
for,
I can find my little scribbles. Hang on.
yeah, I couldn't even,
Hang on.
I compared it to my.
I'm very active with my red pen.
I compared it to my notes from the last one, and I couldn't really find anything
No.
different.
Nope, I was wrong. It was just the date. So that's nice.
So
EAF Part 2 is the
Part 2
same.
is the same as what we went through at the
Yep.
August meeting, okay?
So that's just redated. The visual EAF addendum
Yeah,
didn't
the-
change at all. There were no comments
Right,
on
the
that.
date is new, right?
And all that happened with full EAF Part 3 is it was redated because it just simply refers to the seeker negative declaration notice of determination of non-significance, which is the last item in that pile, and it's draft number 3 dated September 8. And it is really very similar to the last one. Let me see if there are revisions there.
I did notice some revisions in it that
There
re-
were
that reflected.
deletions.
Yeah, that reflected
There was a
some of the.
lot of stuff, I can walk you through some of it. Anything that was related to an outstanding planning comment was addressed in the site plans. So anything related to those was just taken right out. So I'm pretty sure that's it on that. Let me just take a quick look, see if there's anything major that would be of interest.
So it's heavy.
This isn't the tracked one. I know I did cut out some chunks, and honestly, I think it was just related to the item that I just spoke about. What?
All the outstanding planning comments.
Yep.
as conditions.
Yep, all the outstanding planning comments were taken out. So not a whole lot of change to the seeker negative declaration, some formatting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think there were also maybe a couple of things that I had suggested for wording changes that we
Yep.
went through at the last meeting, which
Yep.
I checked and those were
I mean,
done.
yes. Not no, sorry. My Vermont's coming out. So I don't think do we need to do a walkthrough of the negative declaration? Just touch on topics, or no?
What is the board's desire?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. The new entrance is going to be across from Carroll Lane.
Correct.
Correct. The existing one where the trucks are going in now, because I've been behind trucks, they go up and they come all the way back down. How is that going to be repaired or landscaped or whatever? The existing one. I know we talked about a burn, farther. Again, I haven't been on the, have no idea where this facility is going to be on that property, because I haven't been on the property. But how's that going to work?
Okay. Again, my name's Luke Clementi, General Manager, Century Aggregates. Per the DOT permit, the curb cut permit, we're going to be in close coordination with them. Per the permit, we're not required to have two entrances. So when the day comes to open up the new one, we have to close down the existing one. Once the existing one is closed, that dirt, there's like a horseshoe dirt road there. We'll spread topsoil over the top of that, reseed that, and we'll turn that back to vegetation.
Okay, because there's also a burn or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what that.
Yeah, part of it's a berm, and it's also not fully developed yet. It still has more to be done there to finish that up. So we'll be doing some landscaping in that area, but the goal is to return it to a natural state.
But my understanding is that's all part of the DOT permit
Right.
scenario of the new access versus closing down
Right.
the old one. And it's too bad that that's the way the state made it happen. I don't agree with it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with how it's going to look. You're putting it back to just grass, any bushes or anything else, anything going in there, or just grass?
I mean, my intentions would be to finish the berm, and then when the berm is finished, I plan on planting trees on the top of the berm and in front of the berm, so I do plan on softening the look to, that's my plan.
Thank you.
And I'm open to suggestions. I mean, we did discuss it during one of our site tours.
Well, I think it looks crappy now, but that's...
Yeah, well, it's also, it's not done. It's not complete. Part of it is still temporary. Some of it's just temporary as a visual barrier until we permanently close it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sometimes I know something.
So, what's the board's desire in terms of, do we want to go through any details of the draft neg deck? We already went through them basically at the August meeting.
I don't think if there's anything, there's nothing significant changed in it, so I think we can just
Right.
move forward.
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just when things were corrected on the plan.
Right.
things came
Yeah.
up.
Okay. So that, and I just made a note to myself to remind myself that MJ did not submit an updated engineering memo because basically the one that you submitted, actually the last couple, had really everything we needed to know for the cost estimates from the construction that were submitted by the applicant going into the resolution.
Yep, the only outstanding comment was the Board of Health, but it sounds like they have that pretty much wrapped up until the final plan is approved.
Okay. All right. So why don't we go right to the draft resolution that Dominic prepared and then see where we stand after going through that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you would have before you draft number 8. It's been updated since the draft that was prepared for the August meeting. And if I may, I believe on page 2, we would update the date of the negative declaration and put that in for today's date, September 11th, 2025, although I note you haven't acted on the negative declaration at this point.
Right.
But that would be the case when you
yeah.
do. And the resolution makes the findings that are required by the town code regarding both preliminary and conditional final site development plan approval. It would also find that there's no need and no requirement for a second public hearing on the project since the proposed final site development plan is in substantial conformity with the preliminary development plan. There is no need for recreation fees because this is not a residential development. And then the conditions of approval are fairly standard. They include addressing any outstanding engineering comments, although I don't believe that there aren't anything significant. The applicant has to obtain all the outside agency approvals. They have to post a performance bond. They have to post a maintenance bond. There's an inspection fee that's required. There are the final plan revisions that are required prior to the signature of the chair. There's a requirement that all fees are paid and the escrow deposits made. And then there's the board's standard requirements regarding landscaping, screening, lighting, and architectural design and details. There's a limitation of use that relates to the fact that this application is only for the redevelopment of the portion of the Snow Valley Campground and involves the construction of an 8,050 square foot concrete batch plant and related activities, and anything beyond that would require the applicant to return to the board for an amended approval. There's a limitation on amenities and accessory structures. Only that what's shown on the plan can be constructed. If the board adopts the resolution, then the seeker mitigation measures that are contained in the negative declaration are incorporated by reference and become a condition of the approval as well. And there's also obviously the requirement to conduct specifically the post-development noise monitoring study. And that provision has been updated with the most recent dates of the plan that's been proposed. And lastly, the last condition would be the fact that this would be binding not only on the applicant, but any successors in interest.
All right, so let's just see if there are any questions on any of the EAF documents, the neg deck, or the resolution, and then we'll go through each one and get motions for them.
No questions.
All right, so...
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just
Yep.
one point of clarification.
Okay.
Obviously, performance bond will be required. It may simply be the board standard language, but just, there was an estimate for the bond submitted, and I think that's been reviewed. The language includes reference to landscaping, sidewalks, et cetera. Obviously, no landscaping or sidewalks here. We just
Those
wanted
are standard conditions.
language. Just wanted to clarify that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We would like a sidewalk all the way up
Yes.
Route 9 from Fishkill all the way down to Cold Springs.
As many lawyers say, we'll take that under advisement.
Okay. Again, a little levity. Very little.
You know, we are attorneys, so.
We'll take that into consideration.
Well, it is going to be a cement plant, so they might have the cement to do it.
True. I didn't think of it that way. Good thinking, Fred. All right. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the draft EAF Parts 2 and 3 for the Century Aggregates Concrete Batch Plant as reviewed tonight and authorize the chair to sign?
So moved. No,
Oh.
Jody got me.
Who moved
Jody
it?
wins.
Jody wins the motion. And who seconded it?
I'll take second.
Felix seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback on the microphones
I'll
now.
have him turn it down. We had some people in the audience that couldn't hear.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's go on to the neg deck. Is there a motion to approve the draft neg deck for the Century Aggregates Concrete Batch Plant as reviewed tonight and authorize the chair to sign that?
So moved.
That was Kevin.
Second.
Was that Jody seconding it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Hearing no abstentions, that carries 7-0. All right, so that leaves the resolution. That sounds better, too. Any other questions for Dominic on the resolution before we go ahead with the motion on that?
No.
All right, is there a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the Century Aggregates Site Development Plan as reviewed and revised tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it? And those revisions just have to do with filling in the date for the neg deck that we just adopted.
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Fred?
That's Fred.
Fred.
I was looking at Kevin and I didn't see your mouth move.
Okay.
Marionette.
Any further discussion?
Really big.
Nope.
That's all.
No further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. And we are done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you. I think the process resulted in an improved project, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Fishkill knows it.
All right. Give me 1 second here.
Debbie, do you want me to send it to you? Or do you just
I
want
got
the
it. We're
dates?
good, Dominic. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
That was an easy one, thank you. So,
And last but not least, the final item on the agenda. We're not taking questions or comments. If the question was going to be why there weren't any comments allowed on the discussion and actions just taken on the Century aggregates, it's because we had the public hearing. The public hearing was closed, and there were no further opportunities for public comment as...
that was not,
Okay, well...
I just wanted to know what happens next. You can call planning in the morning, John, that's be fine. You can call the planning office in the morning, we can tell you.
As far as what happens next, the planning board has completed our review and actions on this matter. Fishkill Medical Park, site plan and subdivision, board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on August 26, 2025. Welcome back after these many months. If you would like to come up and fill us in on what's been happening since we saw you last.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board. I think since the last time we were here, we really have focused on the single outstanding item, and that was getting... Sorry, I'll wait a minute for the...
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. You can really clear a room out.
Yeah. Well, and since we're so early in the meeting, you can take as long as you want.
I object.
Yes, just a very little levity again.
I second that. These guys.
So really, what we've focused on is the single, what we believe is the single outstanding seeker item. That's OPRHP reviewing the site. And when we were last here, the OPR had said we have some concern about disturbance of a potential what's called a pre-contact site, which really means pre-European contact on the site. So Native American site on the property, and they said we'd like you to avoid it. So we submitted an alternatives analysis about what it would take to kind of the steps that we went through to choose this site, the issues that we went through when designing the site, and what it would take to avoid the site. And look, anything can be engineered, right? That's it's all a matter of is it reasonable? Is it a cost-effective way to proceed? And it really wasn't. We really weren't able to effectively avoid impact of this pre-contact site. And OPR reviewed that alternatives analysis and they consulted with the tribal nations, local tribes as well, their representatives, and determined that yes, the site can be disturbed. There's a process then, it has to be mitigated, and that's really kind of where we are now. And so the mitigation requires for development of what they call a data recovery plan. The state has rules and regulations about how that data recovery plan is developed. They compare what our archaeologist would do and say, well, okay, yes, that's got all the correct requirements, and then it has to be followed. So those are both those are two pieces of the mitigation, and we have then incorporated those requirements onto the site plan, so that the board then, the town, remains in control of the process. That in fact the mitigation, like any kind of mitigation, has to be completed before the project can be completed. So that's where we believe we are. It's what we submitted. It's what our documents say, and I think there's just some. Having reviewed the comments from Liz, I just think there's some interpretation differentials that we could certainly talk further with the board. So that's really where we are. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I would just note after your planner has an opportunity to review her comment memo, there's, one particular item we'd just like to be heard on as referenced by Mr. King.
Sure. All right. Well, we have two different memos, so why don't we first go through MJ's memo.
Going through our memo dated September 5th, most of our comments have been addressed. We do note that as part of a subdivision, they'd have to have the plat signed by a professional licensed surveyor. And then there was a couple of comments on the off-site improvements. There may do a directional bore under 84, so we'll just have a full set of plans submitted as part of the, or more detailed plans submitted as part of the building permit on that. And then also you would need to get a use and occupancy permit for that from the DOT, which those are repeat comments. Everything else has been addressed at this point.
Thanks for that. Any questions on the MJ memo? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have CPL's memo dated September 9th. Liz, you want to go through that?
Yeah, what I tried to do with this is just kind of lay out what is left, and there's one comment about something being addressed, but, the bottom of page 1, the first full EAF comment had to do with the sidewalks. I'm just really reiterating that so that we don't forget about it. It has to do with contributing to a fund because sidewalk construction along that roadway isn't necessarily a preferred item. And then basically comment 4, I did my best to try to reiterate what has been submitted because we have gotten a substantial update here on progress that the applicants folks have made with OPRHP. So I kind of run through that on page 2 just to kind of get the board updated on that. And then top of page 3, I just went ahead and quoted right from the applicant's response letter because they explain it fine. And basically it explains that the, let's see, they're explaining the mitigation of snow fencing around some of the sites. And OPRHP notes have been added to the drawing. They're on the title sheet. Later in my comments, I suggest that they be included, those notes be included on plan sheets that are showing actual areas of disturbance. And then the notes reiterate the avoidance and protection plan to be developed for review and acceptance by OPRHP, and then would be implemented prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The data recovery plan for mitigation efforts needs to be approved by OPRHP, and a report shall be developed for acceptance by OPRHP demonstrating compliance with the approved DRP. So there's some more steps, and what it wasn't absolutely clear is what's going to happen now, what's going to happen later, and it just sounded like OPRHP needed to approve the data retrieval plan. I think that's the main thing. And, Jeff and I have had offline consultation before, and he reached out, and I just couldn't, sorry about that, but we can go over some of that, I hope, if the board's okay with that, to get a better frame up of that. And then just down at the bottom, the July 22 letter talks about some of the steps that are left. And I'm just going to read the quote. It's the opinion of OPRHP that the project will adversely impact Snook Road pre-contact site 2. We thus recommend that a 36 CFR 61 qualified archaeologist develop a data recovery plan, DRP, to mitigate the adverse impacts on the archaeological site. Submit the DRP, I'm paraphrasing, submit the DRP for review using the Cultural Resource Information System, or CRIS. Has to be reviewed by DEC in the Stockbridge, Muncie community and Delaware Nation. So I believe that's a step that still has to be taken or is underway.
And also, I'd be interested just to hear your viewpoint on, like, how long that process normally might take.
I don't know if we have an estimate. I know our historian and archaeologist is working on the data recovery plan, but that was actually the point that we just wanted to address the board on. Do you mind if I jump in at this point? Okay,
Please.
thank you. So I noted in Liz's memo that she indicated that it's not a final sign-off from OPRHP, but we look at it slightly different. We agree that they are going to, at some point, do a final sign-off after we have prepared, submitted the data recovery plan, and completed the data recovery plan. If you've, I'm not sure how many of you have been here since we had the older some projects I know that were before review in the local area. The data recovery plan is really the process where if there is an item found, how it's going to be cataloged, photographed, where it's going to be stored, all of that, and as Mr. King mentioned, there's regulations. So our position is just a slightly different view on the word sign-off. We believe it's a sign-off for seeker purposes because they have determined that there will be an adverse impact, but this is the mitigation on that impact. So when you're going through the part 2 of the EAF, you're going to answer that question that some are substantial, I forget exactly how it's worded, even though I look at them every day. And then in the part 3, you're going to be indicating that this is the mitigation. So we would ask that you consider authorizing the preparation of the part 2 as we're proceeding forward with the data recovery plan that we're submitting, because OPRHP has indicated from a seeker perspective what their position is.
Yeah, that seems, we'll look to Dominic for some input, but that seems to me a key part here is that SHPO has basically said that they see this as an adverse impact. They didn't say whether it's a significant one, although their requirement for the follow-up work and studies implies to me that it's a potentially significant one. And yet the planning board can't really make that determination ourselves because that's something that really only SHPO can do unless we hire an archaeologist, which we've done before, and make a determination that we could make, but which may or may not be the same one that SHPO would make. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 situation, I think. Dominic, what do you think about all this?
We're going to review the data recovery plan, yeah.
SHPO is not going to...
Can you come up?
Come on.
SHPO is not going to answer your EAF question for you, right? They're not gonna provide that guidance. So what they where they are now is they've said it is an adverse impact, and here's the mitigation. And I think that's the OPR sign-off doesn't really happen until after the mitigation is complete, and that's clearly mitigation happens after a project is approved. But that's, I think, all we can really expect from the state at this point is to say that yes, they recognize there's going to be an impact. Here are the steps to mitigate it. Complete the DRP. Submit it, have them sign off on it, complete the actual removal of the material from the site, and store it, photograph it, write a report on it as required.
Mr. Kane, if I may, that's actually a key point in my mind. When would that occur?
So the
Actually, the cataloging is your question?
Yeah, so in terms of going out, doing the data recovery, looking for art items and artifacts really, and cataloging them according to the data recovery plan, is that, and I guess another way if I'm asking this is does that happen after the DRP is approved?
Yes.
Or let me give you the alternative number 2. Or does that happen during or even prior to construction, but after approval of the plan?
So both things can be true, right?
Right, that's why I wanted you to wait before you answer.
Yeah, right.
That sounds like an attorney's.
The answer is because it's mitigation, it all happens during the construction process. So the data recovery plan is actually being developed by our.
Well, I think that's an important point, and if you allow me, you know, like you'd actually have to go out and physically do the work in order to complete this process to ultimately close out, you know, not only the data recovery plan, but like all that mitigation that's required, you know, and so, you know, I say this too often, but there's a saying, 2 attorneys, 3 opinions. But, you know, I think in this instance, like I do agree with Mr. Kane that OPRHP has said that this is an adverse impact. This is the lead agency. The board itself has an obligation to classify whether or not that this is you know, a small or moderate to large impact. And in any event, the overseeing agency has identified what mitigation measures have to be, you know, pursued or implemented as a result. So I think that OPRHP has provided information as far as a path forward, you know, through this, but part of the catch-22 is that you actually wouldn't be doing the actual data recovery until you're basically mobilizing on site and starting work. Like, you know, you wouldn't do it tomorrow, you know, you would do it when you're ready and have all of your other permits in place and are ready to start construction. Presumably, I mean, that's how I've seen it done in the past, so.
It's I believe you're right, it's like, you don't build the extra lane on Route 9.
Right.
If that were a mitigation, right? You don't do that until you're under construction, right?
Right,
So, yeah.
right, and you don't get your certificate of occupancy until like that work is done, right, you know. So.
That was the point I was going to make. The actual data recovery is an ongoing, because you're never going to locate all the items until you're actually there on site, and you're going to find what you come across as you're doing the construction.
Right.
Can I throw a question in there? I don't, you know, I don't.
Then after you, I'll have one too.
Oh, you want to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
So I guess I'm
thinking,
not recommending, just thinking, does this mean if we had, for example, a detailed plan sheet that showed us more of that data recovery process graphically, that's one.
Okay.
And then the other thing I'm thinking, something that I think most boards don't want to do and many attorneys don't recommend, which would be a conditioned neg deck.
that was my question, so let me
Okay,
expand
sorry.
on that part.
You go.
Because I went to seeker, both the regs and the handbook, and really tried to figure out, because I thought, well, maybe a conditioned neg deck is where we should go. But after I read it, I don't think so. Because the planning board, a local board, cannot condition a neg deck on something that a state agency is responsible for doing.
Right, right. But I think in this case, if I understand it correctly, and Liz's suggestion is a good one, is I think the applicant, you know, can submit, you know, a document that lays out this process, you know, which they discussed tonight, but, you know, it's basically like almost like a flow chart as to like this is going to happen when, you know, including the approval of the data recovery plan by SHPO, the consultation that you're conducting with the tribes, and also like indicating like when in the process like the actual field work would be done, and then the follow-up report to SHPO, and then ultimately, you know, the sign-off that you would be receiving from them. And I hate to use that word sign-off because it's almost like an acceptance of like whatever work is done at that point. And I think that the point that you're driving at is that this is the mitigation, you know, that they've identified this as the mitigation. And so I don't think a conditional negative declaration would be appropriate here either. For an additional reason is that, you know, this state agency, OPRHP or SHPO, like has provided, you know, like the mitigation measure. I think a conditional neg deck would be appropriate if like you had a situation where they hadn't yet, you know, provided, and so like you're basically saying, well, we think that this a neg deck applies as long as, you know, you get this other thing from over there. But I think, you know, the applicant is demonstrating and can perhaps demonstrate to the board's satisfaction that they are well underway in this process.
Since it's part of site disturbance, could it be like a sheet in the plan? So there would be a graphic aspect and a process aspect. And then the board's approving it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, I'm just thinking, you know.
It could be notes on the site development plan, but I think it might be more helpful to have a separate sheet that just says this is the data recovery plan process, you know, or you know, however they want to phrase it. I don't want to phrase it for them, but it basically like addresses like these are the steps that will be undertaken, that you're committing to undertake. You know, like this is what SHPO required, this is what you're doing, and this is when they're going to happen. Those steps are going to happen.
Let me ask another clarification question before I forget my train of thought here. But tell us what an actual data recovery plan, a DRP, looks like. It's not going out on the site and doing something. It's telling SHPO what you plan to do if they accept that plan. Right. So that to me implies that that plan should be submitted simultaneously. Well, I mean, it should be submitted to SHPO as they requested before you can actually go out on the site and do anything. But that also sounds similar to what Dominic is suggesting be submitted to the board, which is this is what the data recovery plan will say. This is what we're going to do if we get authorization from SHPO to do this as a mitigating measure. They haven't done that yet. They haven't said it's okay. They've said you need to submit a DRP to SHPO and then we'll take the next step.
Right. So I guess two things. One, in terms of the plan, the area, there's only on the plan that can be submitted is this is the area that's to be investigated, and that is clearly identified on the plans. So that part is already there.
Right.
And then the second piece is the DRP is like the recovery. The actual DRP is not a plan sheet. It's a written document.
Yeah.
Just right. So
exactly.
just for clarification.
It basically says how you're going to disturb that area, how you're going to do it carefully, how you're going to find stuff, how you're going to catalog it, how you're going to preserve it, and document it. You know, so like, and that you're not going to go through there with a bulldozer, you know, or an excavator, you know, putting in a stormwater basin,
or even do any other kind of disturbance to the site until you submit the DRP to SHPO, and SHPO comes back and says, okay, this looks fine. Now we can take the next step. That is what I'm thinking the planning board will need to see, that sign off. That would actually be a sign off from SHPO that would let us then proceed with a environmental assessment.
Right, but that's
well, that's what their letter says.
One of the questions you asked was how long that process is, and again, we at least my position is, I'll defer to Becky what hers is, but my position is that as I've done this in the past, this DRP is part of the mitigation, so it is a post-seeker during construction item. The DRP preparation and finalization is actually part of the mitigation. So seeker proceeds and the DRP can follow after, because it's a review that, you know, this board isn't, no offense, this board really isn't you aren't an archaeologist. You're not going to review the DRP for does it comply with the federal regulations. That's what the SHPO does. So it's a 90-day process, probably, for SHPO to get, review, and okay the DRP. And
That's like something comparable to what it took the last 3 or 4 months
yes.
before you came back to
And
us.
we'd rather not lose, right,
But to
that
look
additional
at,
time.
but to look at it from another perspective, we're putting together a document that's going to set forth procedures.
Right.
And as I stated earlier, SHPO's already indicated their position as far as seeker and the environmental impact. So we have to do a document that satisfies their regulations and meets their approval. None of that really modifies what you're doing in the seeker process if the Part 3 and the negative declaration indicate that the applicant is required as the mitigation to obtain an approved data recovery plan. That data recovery plan has to be signed off on. Either we can do that as a condition of final before we even can get signed site plans. That would allow for the process to go forward with SHPO, but I don't think it impacts you on a seeker side because you're waiting for their sign off on our procedures.
See, that's where I differ with, and I'm not an attorney or an archaeologist, and I'm a pretty logical person, so I'm trying to look at it logically in terms of, and I'm a retired professional planner, so I know planning and I know what an EAF Part 2 and a neg deck is about. And the EAF Part 2 has that question on it, is there a sensitive archaeological site? The answer is yes, we know that because we now have follow-up information on it. And now we've heard from SHPO that there is an adverse impact. They haven't said how significant the impact is. We can't really define that ourselves until and unless we hear something more from the agency which is an involved agency, which is having the authority to actually review it.
I don't think SHPO does that. They're going to approve or disapprove the plan.
Can I just follow up on something Jonathan said? I think part of what's going on is that we've seen some stuff in a response letter. We're hearing it verbally, but to lay out the steps would be helpful to really lay out what the steps are and where your team believes that that mitigation is sufficiently spelled out so that the planning board has it to look at and evaluate. And right now, I don't think we have that.
Right.
I don't think we have a clear understanding of the sequence or the details.
But isn't that the DRP?
That could be the DRP
but we don't have it.
That outlines the process and the details of what the mitigation will be.
I just have a question, though. Let me throw an idea out, though. If we indicate to you what we're proposing as the mitigation, and we submit that, and then there's a minor adjustment by SHPO that does not impact, I don't know. I'm just struggling with the fact that we have a very procedural document where we've already indicated just because a project may have an adverse impact in one area doesn't necessarily warrant not proceeding forward where we know where the mitigation is my point.
But, I guess it's just the thing is the board needs to be confident. They're the decision maker. So I guess that's the gap here is having the planning board have enough information about the details of the process and how it proceeds so they can play their role as the decision maker in whether or not it's time to go forward with seeker and ask for fully, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's also a little different from the example you used before of, say, DOT requiring an extra lane to, accommodate the capacity of a road. We're not saying, pretending you're an applicant who has to build the additional lane, that you have to build the lane before we do our seeker determination. We're saying we have to have enough evidence from the applicant and from the state agency, the involved agency, on why the additional lane is necessary and what that would look like. That's more comparable to the situation we have now with the this plan that SHPO is asking for. It's not that we're asking for all that stuff to be dug up and cataloged before we make our determination. It's that we need to see, this is my point of view, we need to see the DRP that you would be submitting to SHPO, and we also need to hear back from SHPO that, okay, this plan looks good, and then we can make our determination.
So my final point will be that SHPO has regulations on drafting the DRP, and they're not going to approve it. So for you to have a different opinion would be you taking a contrary position to their regulations, and
well, I don't know that we would disagree with what they come up with. I don't know what basis we would have for that.
Which is again why I wonder why we're delaying at least the drafting of a Part 2 while we deal with the third-party agency that's going to determine that the mitigation complies with the regulations.
For the record, I would say the planning board is not delaying anything. It's a process that we're trying to figure out. So Dominic, after having heard some further discussion.
I don't think I have anything further to add. You know, I think you made your position clear that you want to see additional details as suggested, and I would recommend that the applicant, submit, these steps that we've outlined here tonight, as well as much information regarding the data recovery plan, so that the board can understand that process and be guided accordingly.
Seems to be an unfortunate set of terminology here with data recovery plan. What we're really talking about is a plan on how to
recover,
how to go into these particular defined areas and do some archaeological work.
That's exactly what happens.
And in my mind, if that's the DRP, the most important thing is, because we don't know to what extent that archaeological work itself is going to add a significant amount of cycle time to the entire project. So so to me, the most important thing is when, in relationship to the construction, do you execute the DRP? And that means, to me, you could run across something that turns into a dig, right? And you don't know what you're going to run across.
Right. It's and I can pull the plan up, but it's a very limited area.
Yeah.
Right. That's been identified based on there's been a lot of studies on the site already. It's a very limited, well-defined area, and that has to be further dug they dig at a 50-foot grid, and as they find items, then they reduce those that grid, and as they find an item, then they have to catalog it. I mean, that's the process that has been done and it's been outlined in every one of the cultural resource studies that we've submitted. So that process remains the same. I think this process of the DRP is, again, I think it's outlined in the documents. We submit the DRP to SHPO. They eventually accept the DRP, and then we start to do the further digs. Those are the steps, and that's in the documents that we submitted. It's that simple.
I just want to throw something in, having worked as part of an applicant team, that I remember that there was something we did for BARD, and anything that we submitted to OPRHP would also be submitted to the decision-making body, the local decision-making body. So I think that's a pretty normal thing to whatever is getting
absolutely, and we have submitted, continue to submit, and you're copied on the
that's
everything comes out of Chris. I know is copied to Debbie, and I know it's in the files. I know you get it right. That's
we just don't have the DRP yet, so that's
right. So it's
not only that, but the SHPO says the DRP has to be submitted to DEC as well. Sorry about all these abbreviations for those people out there listening to this conversation, but the DEC, of course, is the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, but the State Historic Preservation Organization, office, basically says that specifically in their letter.
Yep.
So we're not the only ones who would need to see it. It's also DEC and the Native American nations who are involved.
Right.
So,
And this doesn't change any of that, absolutely. Right?
No.
Absolutely.
And that's why, at minimum, my opinion is that the DRP should be prepared and submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office and these other organizations and the planning board. And then we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like. And if it looks like something that we can use to make our own seeker determination, we can then decide that. But I can't decide that right now, tonight, to say, okay, so here's the other thing, timing-wise. If you think by the October 2nd meeting, which is a week earlier than it would have been because we changed the meeting date, which still has a submission date of September, whatever it is, 24th. If you think you can get a completed DRP submitted to our board by the 24th of September, in time for us to review it, along with possibly, if we decide to authorize at least an EAF Part 2, if not a neg-deck, we could authorize it. The only thing is, I don't want to waste our consultants' time if it actually is a much longer process, and I'm sure Liz and CPL have many other projects to work on, to create that kind of a time frame for CPL to prepare the EAF Part 2 draft when we don't even know for sure what we're going to be seeing.
We'll have the draft DRP to you. We can certainly get that in time for that submission deadline. It won't be signed off by OPRHP because that's not the pace that they move. But we can certainly have that submitted, and that'll give you a little more insight into what the DRP is, so you'll have more clarity on what to expect. It's not going to. Yeah, I think that works. And yeah, right. It's never wasting Liz's time, because if it's not now, it's later, right?
I probably should have used a different way of putting it, is that I don't want to put undue pressure on Liz to create a document that, of course, a lot of the other parts of that document have already been addressed. And so that's going to be the easier part. The harder part is going to be to try to put something in there that would say what the significance of the archaeological sensitivity of the site is before we actually have further information on it.
I just have two questions. One is going to be really easy. So you said you moved the October meeting up a week, so are you meeting the first Thursday of the month?
Yes.
2nd of October.
Okay.
Just this month.
And then,
Next month.
Yes.
so then if we submit the same document we are submitting to OPR, would you still like an executive summary that would go through?
Want the whole thing.
Let's see what.
No, I'm saying we're going to submit the whole thing, but on top of that, would you like an executive summary?
Well,
Yes.
isn't it usually part of it, or no?
I would assume so, but
I
just
would
because
think
we had
an
talked earlier about an outline, I just want to make sure I'm responding to the question.
I think it probably would be helpful for all
Yes.
involved to have like an explanation of like how this fits into the overall process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And if we get that in time for the October 7 submission date, then we can decide on October 2nd whether we are going to authorize the preparation of the seeker documents, or part of the seeker documents. Depends what it looks like.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So that's the middle date.
September 24th.
A little less than 2 weeks.
A little less than 2 weeks, 13 days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Do we get minutes? Have we received minutes of these meetings? Yeah. Yes. Do we get minutes anymore?
Thanks for your patience on this.
You know, minutes, long time. There's no boys to do minutes.
Yeah.
Nobody can.
Okay.
It's not for me.
All right.
That seems like such an incomplete way to end that
Yeah.
session.
Do we get anybody else?
Nonetheless, it is ended. So anything else that board members would like to bring up?
No.
We've got plenty of time.
Yes, thank you.
If there's anything been on your mind that you want to talk about, this is the time to do it.
Jonathan, are you familiar with the new flood maps? What, the flood maps are gone now? They're no longer using the flood maps? The New York
I'm not
State
sure
flood
about
maps?
the flood maps. I know wetlands maps.
Wetland maps. are
Okay,
gone.
so you're not talking about the flood hazard maps.
Yeah, well, I don't know what consultants are gonna do about any of the subdivisions, because it's really affecting potential projects in the future. Like, I'm not sure if this project that we're doing in the golf course would meet the requirements.
I think, Dennis, you mentioned that in your previous memos on the Fishkill Commerce Center, the golf course warehouse one, that with the changing DEC regulations on wetlands and wetland mapping, that the applicant should check with DEC to make sure they're on the right track with whatever DEC is going to do.
The ones that accepted, I don't know, Fred, if you're talking, there's new ones that are coming out, or draft, there's ones that are in draft form now.
No, they've been accepted.
Okay, there's ones that came out at the beginning of the year that was basically what they changed the size and requirements for what would be considered a DEC website, wetland. And I believe everything on that site is already a DEC wetland, so I don't think there would be anything that would change on that. So it would only be anything that would be, used to be a federal wetland or a town wetland that would now be considered a DEC wetland.
And that's all online.
And that, yeah, I don't think there's anything that would change
It's
on
all
that
in the
project.
online mapping. You have to turn the layer on.
Well, I've been sitting on some of those here, some of those informing us, I'm in real estate, and they're informing us, and, reducing it, and they showed us potentially how much of a subdivision you would lose, or any development you would lose, because it goes into it. And I think this whole Fishkill golf course is wetlands, so.
Well, not only is it wetlands, but it's the aquifer underneath.
Well,
let's not talk specifically about that proposal.
I'm not doing aquifer.
I'm
worried about what we're facing.
My concern
Fred is bringing up a more
Move to adjourn.
general question.
Yeah.
You probably should adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn?
Our attorney has spoken.
Yes. Yes, I think.
But Fred, I think there's in draft form now, there's going to be new regulations that are coming out that are going to be a little bit more lax than was approved at the beginning of the year.
The ones that I've met with DEC, they've come to, some of the places up, and it's up to the applicant to determine what their DEC, what the wetlands are, regardless of anything. And then you have to and then you have to submit to them, and they have a certain amount of time to say yes or no.
That's how it currently is, yes.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a whole new ball game in a lot of areas.
Oh, yes.
And we have a lot of water. They say ponds, little ponds somewhere, and it knocks things out. I do rely on, the engineers and
Yeah, there's certain, if you go on, I think there's 12 or 11 requirements for it to be considered DEC wetland now, that would get changed.
Well, as I said, but it's that Is the golf course part of that?
I really would prefer
don't know
not a discussion of particular projects that are not on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. I make a
Period.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
As chair, I have a right to second something like that.
Dominic?
Aye.
Thanks all.
Big family